Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webcast, FASD and Women, part of our monthly series of webcasts on issues relating to FASD. This webcast is part of our FASD Cross-Ministry Committee's initiative and 10-year FASD strategy to provide accessible educational sessions that cover a broad range of topics that are accessible to all Albertans. For more information about this series, check your emails for our regular updates or go to csslearningseries.ca or by following us on Twitter at AlbertaCSS. You will be able to pose your questions to myself via our live chat window. I will address as many of these questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Paige Boudreau is our online moderator. She'll pose your web chat questions to our speakers. Today's session is also being recorded and the video will be posted on the Alberta FASD website about 2 weeks after the live session. We will now hear from Dr. Therese Grant, who has a pre-recorded session.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me to present at the Human Services Learning Series for Alberta. I'm happy to participate in this. My name is Therese Grant. I'm a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at the University of Washington in Seattle. I'm also the director and developer of the Parent-Child Assistance Program, which is a home visitation and case management model that works very closely with high-risk substance abusing mothers. The name of my presentation today is Substance Abuse and Intergenerational Trauma, Breaking the Cycle. First of all, what do we know about pregnant and parenting women who abuse alcohol and drugs? Well, they've been labeled a lot. They've been disparaged. Unmotivated, difficult to reach, hopeless are all the terms that we've heard about the mothers we work with. They're often blamed in our socio-political climate for a variety of social ills, including giving birth to children who are exposed and affected by drugs and alcohol, the ensuing problems with foster care system, juvenile justice. So not surprisingly, because of this vilification, the women we work with become distrustful of helping agencies. They really become separated from, they don't turn to helping agencies the way one would hope they would. However, this alienation from community resources only exacerbates their problems. The result is that the women who are at the very highest risk for delivering children with serious medical, developmental, and behavioral problems are the least likely to seek and receive prenatal care and other assistance from community resources that are designed to help them. So there's a great disconnect here between the mothers who need our help the most and the services that are in the community. The Parent-Child Assistance Program was developed in 1991 to, we undertook the challenge to try to figure out how to connect with these women. The aims of the program are straightforward: to help women get into complete substance abuse treatment and stay in recovery, to build healthy family lives and be able to maintain custody of their own children, to do a good job with the kids they currently have, and to prevent future alcohol and drug exposed births. PCAP is a 3-year home visitation and intensive case management model. We're very excited that PCAP has been operating in Alberta for many, many years. So what we see in PCAP is an intergenerational cycle. It's transgenerational. In most cases, the mothers that we work with in PCAP are repeating the very patterns that they grew up with. Take a look at this data. PCAP clients' childhood history shows that almost all of our mothers had parents, one or both parents, who abused alcohol or drugs. Most of the mothers were sexually abused as children and physically abused as well. I think this 53% is an underestimate because this is data taken from intake before the mothers are completely confident of the relationship with us. In about a third of the cases, child welfare was involved when they were little kids at home. 63% ran away from home as a child. This is before the age of 12. So these mothers as children were trying to get away from a situation that was bad. Almost 40% didn't finish high school. The ones who did finish high school didn't go to class most of the time. And almost 75% have a history of domestic violence in their homes. So transgenerational trauma is trauma that is transferred from the first generation of trauma survivors to the second and further generations of offspring. And this is exactly what we see in PCAP. Take a look at this. I just showed you data about the mother's experiences as children. This is what the moms look like when, 10 years later, 12 years later, when they become eligible for PCAP, when they are pregnant and they're having kids. At intake, 100% of our moms are using alcohol or drugs they have substance use disorders during pregnancy, so they're repeating the patterns their parents demonstrated for them growing up. Their mean age is about 27. The average number of children is about 2.5, but the average number of children who are living with the mother is less than, it's 0.3. So most of the moms are not able to care for the children that they are delivering. 42% have unstable housing, meaning homeless. 70% the main income is welfare, and 3/4 of the mothers have been jailed. Turning our backs on these moms, who are very difficult to work with, does not make their problems go away. So the answer is not just kicking people out of our programs when they relapse or have setbacks again. Turning our backs on the moms does ensure that they'll continue to experience problems associated with intergenerational substance abuse, and they will continue to bear children who will suffer in turn. I wanted to give you a brief example of this intergenerational experience and how it actually affects our data. One of the things that we hear repeatedly from mothers, and we have for the last 25 years, is this phrase: I'm going to keep having babies until they let me keep one. That's what our moms say. And it's true. We took a look at a large data set of almost 800 mothers to look at what are the predictors of mothers having a subsequent delivery during the 3 years of PCAP, a subsequent delivery that's alcohol and drug exposed. And in a logistic regression controlling for all kinds of factors, the most significant predictor for a mother having a repeat pregnancy that's exposed is whether or not her most recent baby had been removed from her custody. So what the mothers say is exactly how it plays out over time. We wrote a paper, that slide has a citation for that, where we talk about what the policy implications are for that information. The solution is not just to take babies away from these mothers. The solution is to figure out, once again, how to connect with them and how to build our communities in ways that will support these families and build healthy mother-baby pairs. The answer is not to take the babies away. Dee Wilson is a very trusted and wonderful colleague we work with here in Washington. This next slide is a quote of his. A key dynamic in chronic neglect is parental loss of self-efficacy due to substance abuse, severe depression, and a history of trauma and despair. The measure of success for parents who present as hopeless and helpless is the energy, initiative, and hope to take on day-to-day challenges with a determined and persistent attitude. That's a tall order. This is what PCAP tries to do, tries to convince these mothers that there is hope, that there is a way to reach inside and find their energy and initiative to begin to live their lives in a way that is productive and will give their children a better chance. So what did we put together in PCAP to try to do these things? PCAP is based on a theoretical framework of 3 things: relational theory, stages of change and self-efficacy concepts, and harm reduction concepts. So theory to practice. A thorough understanding of these 3 theoretical foundations guides our staff in developing effective practices. So when they really understand the theory behind what we're doing, they can think on their feet and design interventions that they put into place on a day-to-day basis. The theoretical framework also contributes to the positive program outcomes that we've seen over the years. The first thing is relational theory. A woman's sense of connectedness to other people is critical for her sense of growth, for her development, and for her definition of self. Positive relationships within the intervention and treatment and recovery setting are critical. There's been a lot of research on this with women, especially women with substance use disorders. Having a high quality interpersonal relationship with another person may determine whether or not the woman stays in an intervention, and it may be more important to her actually than the concrete services that she receives. So in practice, what does this mean? In PCAP, we have a long-term interpersonal relationship with the advocate case manager. Now, any program in the community that works with these mothers, it doesn't have to be a 3-year program. Regardless of the length of time you work with a woman, having an authentic and true and non-judgmental and caring relationship with the mother makes all the difference in the world. Basically, it's having someone to talk to who really cares. The next theoretical foundation point is stages of change. So we understand that our clients are all going to be at different stages of readiness for change. Even though their kids might be being taken away from them, or they're being booted out of their apartment, they're going to be homeless, they're still going to be, a lot of them won't be ready to take the steps they need to change. Motivation is a process for change that occurs within the context of interpersonal relationships. So in PCAP, our intervention that we utilize is motivational interviewing, which is a conversation or a counseling style that really works. Change occurs by listening very carefully to the woman herself, listening to her own statements about her desire to change and why or why not she might be ready for that. Motivational interviewing means that in PCAP, we don't tell women what they need to do. We first are just quiet and listen to what her experiences are. And then we build those next steps around her perspective. MI inspires mothers to examine their own behavior, think about how they are unhappy with their lives, and what they might be able to do to make some changes. And again, most of these mothers don't have experience with this. They don't have a lot of agency. So it goes back to the relational theory of really helping women begin to believe in themselves so that they can move to these next stages of change. Self-efficacy is a really important concept here. Self-efficacy is a person's belief in her ability to accomplish the behaviors that are required to get to those desired outcomes. So the extent to which somebody believes in themselves, a woman's expectations about self-efficacy are influenced most powerfully by her own history of accomplishment. So it's not, self-efficacy doesn't improve by someone telling you that by being a cheerleader, you know, like, oh, you can do this, you're great, you're so wonderful. It really has to do with helping women take actual steps in their own lives and accomplish small steps so that they can look and see that they have actually done these things. They have actually gone back to school and passed a GED class, or they've actually filled out an application for housing, or any of the other thousands of small steps that we take in PCAP. So stages of change and self-efficacy both work together to create a very positive influence on a client's efficacy and her expectations, and ultimately on her behavior. The third part of our theoretical framework is harm reduction. Harm reduction means, the concept of harm reduction means that addiction and all the associated risks are on a continuum. They're on a scale. The goal is to reduce the harmful consequences to both the mother and to her kids. So the intervention that we use is a frame of mind that is, instead of an all or nothing approach, instead of an abstinence-based approach, we believe that any and all steps toward decreased risks are steps in the right direction. So if a woman quits using heroin but is continuing to drink alcohol, that's a step in the right direction. We will still try to work with her to eliminate all of her problematic substance use. But we, PCAP clients are not asked to leave the program because of relapse or setbacks. Another example of harm reduction would be if women are continuing to use drugs and alcohol, we try to help them choose a family planning family planning method so that harm will be reduced to a next generation, so that they'll avoid having an unintended, unwanted pregnancy. So how does PCAP theoretical framework translate into practice? First of all, we offer outreach and ongoing engagement to clients. As I mentioned, clients are not asked to leave the program because of relapse or setbacks. When you kick clients out of your programs, you're not helping them or their kids. You haven't solved the problems. Once again, the issue is trying to figure out how to find a way to connect with the women, listening to them, and being creative about how to intervene with them. So offering that outreach, offering literally a hand to them, looking for them, finding them, demonstrating that you really care. And ongoing engagement means, this isn't just finding them once and bringing them into your program and setting up appointments. It means really ongoing engagement, staying in touch with them, tracing them, doing regular texting with them, phone calls, home visits is what PCAP does. We also provide structured goal setting and problem solving, along with family support and consistent coaching. So one of the hallmarks, the real key foundations of PCAP as far as the methods that we use is a problem solving approach. We use a tool called the difference game that we developed in PCAP that helps women identify the issues that are most important to them, identify goals, and then really construct the baby steps that it will take to reach those goals. So in this slide, this third point here is, again, before you can begin to help a client set goals, you have to learn what matters to her. Not what matters to you as the interventionist, but what matters to her. And that's what these cards help us to do. The next slide talks about other ways that we translate theory into practice. We use a strengths-based approach. Everyone hears about this. This is, pretty common, but I don't know how often it's actually taken seriously. So using a strength-based approach, and remember that everyone has strengths. You may have to dig pretty hard to find them, but you can only help a woman change if you have to start with what you've got. I mean, that's the only way to do it, starting with what you've got, her assets, the assets of her family and the community. What are their strengths? Other things that are really critical in our work is to revise your expectations to be in line with the client's developmental age and functioning. Many of our clients, you saw many slides ago that almost all of our clients were born into families where the parents were both substance users. We estimate that about 20% of our mothers have fetal alcohol spectrum disorders themselves. Many of the other mothers have other neurocognitive impairments due to traumatic brain injury or due to neurological problems that are a result of substance use itself. So it's critical to pay close attention to the woman's developmental level of functioning. And you have to adapt your conversation and your expectations to meet that level. This third point on the slide, identify goals that are understandable, realistic, and manageable. We break goals into very small tasks that are attainable and that the case manager and the mother both take. So the mother realizes she really does have somebody there who cares about her and who is helping her take these steps. She's not out there alone. The case managers do a lot of role modeling and teaching about how to move through this process of problem solving, whether it be with treatment issues or housing. Language matters. Language is hugely important. And again, going back to this concept of fetal alcohol spectrum disorders or other neurologic impairments, we always use concrete language, not abstract. We use multiple modes to present information. We use a lot of illustrations, laminated checklists, use a lot of repetition, and always check for true understanding. After a woman is given some information, to go through that process of finding out whether she really understands that and how she would repeat that back to her. We role play situations, and one of the important things that we've learned the hard way over the years is how critical it is to designate a trusted point person for a woman to go to whenever she has a question or a problem or doesn't know what to do. As we work more closely with women, most of the time moms know what the right decision is to make in a lot of situations as they're starting to become clean and sober and get better. But it's really important that they have someone to call to just check in with if they have a question. Like, is this really okay? Would you do this? Am I on the right track? It makes all the difference in the world. One last example of a concrete activity. This is the kind of thing we do in PCAP. We call this circle and fence. And it's a drawing. We draw a picture of a circle and ask the woman, who's helpful for you? Who's supportive? Who loves you? Who's always there for you? Who can you count on? And we write down her responses, and those are the people who go in her circle. When we first do this in the beginning of the intervention, she might put her drug dealer's name in there, and we have to accept that because that's her world. That's her interpretation of her support system. And over time, she will come to see that that's not the ideal person to support her. So the circle of support is who she views as support people. The fence, or you can draw a brick wall or whatever you want. That the concept is who's not so good for you, who's gotten you into trouble, who's always bad news for you. And women put the names of those people behind that fence. This kind of visual representation and the conversation that goes along with that it's just remarkable to us how the drawings of this and the conversation that goes with it is so much more powerful than simply lecturing a woman about who she shouldn't be hanging around with. And again, using motivational interviewing conversation style and without confronting a woman or disparaging her, you can talk with her about people she has put in the circle of support who maybe you think shouldn't be there. And that would be if she put the name of some guy in there, and you might say, "Now, last time I saw you, isn't he the guy who gave you that black eye?" And she might say, "Well, yeah." And then you would take the conversation beyond that. So tell me about that. Why is he in your circle of support? So motivational interviewing definitely is a key part of using these concrete strategies, and the language concepts are huge. Listening to the woman's point of view, and then repeating those things to her and moving those into problem-solving mode. Here's one of my favorite quotes from a PCAP graduate. "Before PCAP, I never thought about goals. They showed me the right direction. They showed me that I am responsible, that no matter who I am or what I do, I am somebody. It is never too late." Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Dr. Therese Grant. For the rest of our time today, I'm going to provide an overview for FASD of what FASD and trauma looks like in the context of the PCAP program and how PCAP has been cited as a best practice program when working with the high-risk population. And just a tidbit, at the end there will be some time to answer questions, so as you're going, please ask those questions. Don't wait until the end, as we have people logging those questions that I'll be able to hopefully answer at the end of this presentation. So just to provide a bit of a context of what PCAP looks like in Alberta, as you can see from the map, that PCAP has over 30 sites scattered throughout Alberta. PCAP has been in Alberta for more than a decade, providing supports to women. We are using the same model as Seattle. However, throughout the province, we do see different needs as we go throughout the province, because there's different resources available the farther you go north or the farther you go south. So the reality of the support looks different in practice throughout the province. However, the premise of the program does stay the same. PCAP key components, as Dr. Grant has cited, are the relational theory and operating within the harm reduction philosophy, which is really quite key in working with the at-risk women population that we do work with. Overall, the PCAP program has found a way to work with women who have been deemed by society too high needs for service providers. So that is why I'm here today, is to share what has worked to support these high needs women, because women who have similar histories of trauma, intergenerational trauma, addictions, and mental health concerns are visiting supports in the community, and they do not always fit the criteria of PCAP. So being able to implement this type of support has been proven successful within this population. So they would benefit from a PCAP intervention. PCAP over the last couple of years has been started to collect our own data to learn a little bit more what PCAP in Alberta actually looks like. And so that has helped identify that in Seattle and Alberta, we do experience very similar populations to support. However, we do see a bit more high risk population in regards to the trauma they're experiencing in childhood and how that presents as they grow up. So more than 61% of clients had at least one parent abusing drugs or alcohol in their home. We've had 51% of clients that have been sexually abused in some way as a child, and have had 55% with child welfare involvement. History of domestic violence is 76% of our women have experienced, and 100% of women have substance abuse concerns, and 42% housing is unstable. So you can see from the slide that the women we support have significant childhood history with abuse, child welfare involvement, running away from home, growing up in a home surrounded by substance use, and most likely domestic violence based on their own involvement with domestic violence relationships. Something that we do know is women who are experiencing childhood trauma grow up to continue on the cycle of being the victim. And so our women are quite vulnerable and continue to experience similar experiences that they did as children. As Dr. Grant was saying, and as you can see here, the women that we are working with are not only affected with FASD, but they are also struggling with their own trauma, which creates a whole additional barrier when working with the women we work with. Trauma presents in a variety of ways, like substance abuse, mental health concerns, mistrust in service providers, and repeating the cycle that feels normal to them, like domestic violence. Those areas alone create barriers for support. However, the women we work with are always in search for relationships. This is where the harm reduction philosophy and the relational theory really helps to build those relationships that have been so successful. If we are able to break down their walls by being honest, respectful, and consistent, we will be able to develop a relationship with the women, and this relationship will be the tool to help her move forward in her own goals and break the cycle of her experiences. So FASD and PCAP. So in Alberta, we do see a higher rate of FASD. I believe Dr. Grant said that Seattle experiences 20% of their women have an FASD, and based on conversations that I've had with other PCAP programs in the province, and based on the caseloads within the program that I manage here in Edmonton, we are experiencing considerably higher rates of FASD than Seattle. However, I'm not too sure if that is connected to the actual rate of FASD in the community, or that Alberta has more access to diagnostic services. So when we add the complexity of an FASD into the mix of trauma, comes more challenging and demanding work, because not only are women living with childhood trauma and high-risk lifestyles, they are also impacted with FASD. Although PCAP was not designed as an FASD mentorship program, we still see success in this program while supporting women with an FASD. FASD does create additional challenges, like I said. However, utilizing a relationship-based intervention is what creates a space of trust and honesty for women, for the women to have a person that they can rely on. This relationship helps them set up with the services they need to be successful, whatever that looks like for them. PCAP is here to support the women and their aspirations. It's a very client-centered system. We don't mandate women to participate in the program, and this is where we have seen so much success, because they want to connect. They are not made to connect. In a lot of our service providers, we are experiencing women with the same challenges and are most likely diagnosed or have undiagnosed FASD, so suspected of an FASD, that may not fit into this PCAP specific program, but if we're able to offer these interventions in a way that we can, long-term support and build those successful relationships while getting to know the women, we can build a system around them that is successful. PCAP mentors will work to support the success of the women on their caseloads by being creative in how they are supporting them. It's about getting to know the women and figuring out what strategies would work best for her, like using a whiteboard calendar to remind her to eat and to feed her child, or to remind her that she has an appointment and will need to call the bus line to find her route. When we're working with someone with an FASD and when they have the additional barriers, we do need to be extremely patient as we begin to understand what her complexities are and what does that look like for her, and how do we manage her overall life to help her be successable. The PCAP mentor really works as that external brain while operating within that harm reduction philosophy, so that she can build that trust with her main worker, and then create those strategies and put them in place for what that may look like for her. FASD doesn't come with these pre-made strategies. It is a spectrum. FASD looks different for everyone, so we really want to not isolate, that's the wrong word. We really want to support the women and get to know her and what strategies work for her, and really thinking outside of that box. So when you're going into your toolbox looking for how can I help remind her to take her birth control every day, that is something that, setting up alarm clocks, cell phone reminders, writing it out on her board, and all of those things, those external things to help her memory of where her challenges may be. So, like I said, working with women who have FASD does create a bit more work for mentors to put in mechanisms with the women to be successful. This does look different for each person because FASD presents differently in each person. Not only are the women trying to break the cycle of their own experiences, they are trying to do this with organic brain damage. It does take more time and energy on the person themselves, as well as the supports in their life, to achieve their desired goals. FASD does have some common traits that I will talk about, but how these traits present do look different in everyone. So I think that is really something that we want to remember when supporting people in general who have an FASD, is that these traits don't have one strategy that will be successful for every single person that we are supporting. FASD presents very differently for everyone. However, with the common traits, the lack of connecting consequences can look like working the street to get money for bail. And the bail is to bail out a man who is abusing her. So her child can have both parents because she didn't. That is very indicative of the vulnerability and the need for relationship and success. This is something that she sees as being successful, and how can we support that while also recognizing that her trauma and her vulnerability are playing a role in normalizing domestic violence. The abuse, the abuse isn't as bad as she's experienced before. So that in our minds is saying, abuse is bad in general, but for her, physical violence could actually look like love, depending on what her childhood experiences looks like. So being able to connect all of these puzzles when working against her trauma and her FASD, the lack of connection between all of these pieces of the puzzle is really important, that we are helping break down those barriers and accessing those services for her while we're working as her external brain to help with those FASD pieces. Impulsivity, again, it looks different for everyone, but does create a bit of trouble for individuals when they are, for example, I manage the Hope Terrace program, Permanent Supportive Housing for FASD, and we have individuals who bring anyone home. They are walking on the street and they say, somebody on the street says, hey, can I come home with you? And they say yes, and they bring home someone. They have no idea who that person is, what their intention is. So having staff on site is able to get it, able to intervene, and if they don't even know their guest's name, then maybe it's not the best idea for them to bring them into the building. And so that really makes our population extremely vulnerable. They are very trusting, and they really put themselves into situations that they don't realize as a risk. She might get overwhelmed at the grocery store with all the stimuli and experience an outburst. So people with FASD commonly struggle with overstimulation and self-regulation. So there's a lot of choices at a grocery store. There are lights. The lights could be buzzing. There are doors opening and closing. There are people talking on the intercom. There the choice of what to purchase, and then actually having to go and purchase those items. All of that thought process and that entire experience can be very overwhelming. And if she has an outburst that looks like yelling and screaming and overreacting, she will now be arrested, because the grocery store employees are going to call for an outburst that is not normal behavior for an adult. And that's kind of when the mentor comes into play to advocate to those systems that don't quite understand what FASD looks like and presents in community, because it's not that she is having a meltdown to cause anybody trouble. She's overstimulated. There is a lack of verbal comprehension. So many times you will hear people refer to individuals with an FASD as the yes man, which is due to them not being able to hear you or understand the actual words that are being spoken. So instead of looking dumb, they want to just agree. So that means that they might say yes to a variety of things, like a police interrogation. So they are very easily saying yes to a crime that they potentially didn't even commit. They might be saying yes to getting into somebody's car, and that is participating in prostitution, when they may not even realize that that is what the intention of that person asking for, if they wanted to get into the car. So they also may get upset when they don't understand something, because they rather not look dumb. So instead of saying, I'm sorry, I don't understand, they might tell you to F off, or yell at you, or get you to back off, because they are not understanding. So it's really about looking at the behavior behind the action. Why are they yelling at me? What is being triggered? What is happening here? So that you can get behind that behavior, and that's why the PCAP is so great, because you're able to develop that relationship. You have a long-term mentorship program. It's 3 years, as Dr. Trees-Grant said, and you're able to develop that space and understand where, begin to understand where they're coming from. So if they are getting mad at you, you're able to identify and use that relationship to your advantage. We always want to make sure that we are explaining things in concrete terms. So abstract terms do not work for people with FASD. Money is abstract. It's really hard to understand. A debit card is abstract. It's very hard to understand that this represents your check for the month, and as you spend it, your money goes down. It is very hard to make those connections, and usually you're spending money on things that are less important in their daily activities. Trying to budget and use creative methods. For example, we use gift cards. So one of the things that our participants struggle with is getting money to last an entire month for food. So what we've done at the beginning when they get paid is buy gift cards. So those gift cards are now to last the month for food, and now you have X amount of dollars to spend on whatever you would like to spend on. We also make sure that we are setting up third-party agreements so that rent and things like that in the community are being paid and not something that the mentor or the person or the client needs to worry about. It's just already done. It's set up for them. Tasks that have a lot of steps are very overwhelming. So washing the dishes, brushing teeth, taking a shower, all of these things could be really frustrating if you were saying, can you go do the dishes? And they come back and the dishes are not done. The task might have been overwhelming, or they didn't know the sequence from beginning to end of what that actually might look like for them. So really breaking that down, you want to clear out the sink, plug the sink, run the water, put dish soap in the water, so on and so forth, to help break down those tasks so that they can complete it from start to finish. A story that I have heard is a woman who got pregnant, insisted that she was on birth control. And we were trying to figure out how that happened, because she was very very insistent that she was on birth control. But after, trying to find the behavior, is that she was actually inserting her pill because that's where babies come from. So to her, that makes complete sense. And really, to me, it makes fine sense too. No one actually told her you need to swallow the pill. And so that's just a concrete step that was missed while describing this is how you prevent getting pregnant. So when we're really looking towards FASD supports, when we're speaking about women, it is so important that we realize how vulnerable these women are to being further victimized. They have so much trauma. They have the intergenerational trauma, their own childhood issues, and then they have ongoing victimization as they continue to grow up in the system. And then they become an adult where people don't understand how to work with them. They don't understand why they're not, making it to appointments on time. They don't understand why she might be throwing a chair in the drop-in center because of the overstimulation. So really taking a step back and saying to yourself, what is the behavior behind this action, and being patient and creative when working with women and trying to set up a support system that can set up systems to help her through her day, to get to appointments on time, to ensure that she is washing, using soap in the shower, that she is feeding her child, feeding herself. All of these things require external reminders to support someone through their daily life. So that's really brings me to the end of this presentation that I have written here for you. I think the overall message that I want to be sent to be heard today is that the typical PCAP client is being supported through all mainstream services, that this woman is vulnerable, victimized, and most likely diagnosed or suspected of an FASD, and is struggling to survive each day. If we can set up a support system that focuses on relationships that are embedded in FASD knowledge, patience, harm reduction, and honesty, as well as 3 or more years in a program of continuous support, then we will support women to help them move out of their daily struggle and help them create stability for whatever that may look like for them. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. This message is from Kathy. How do you create an external brain for when the 3 years is up? What about the third-party agreements?
Super good question. So it really does look like it does depend on per system and area that you're living in the province. But that external brain is depending on where she is on the spectrum, how impacted she is, can look like PDD, persons with developmental disabilities. It can be a lifelong support, that's consistent support that can have a transition plan put in place to continue on with the work that has been done after the 3 years. A lot of PCAP programs do extend over the 3 years when they are working with a woman who has an FASD to ensure that she continues with supports, and so that once we leave her life, all those supports don't come crumbling down around her. We also have a lifelong FASD mentorship program in Edmonton, and I think Calgary and High Level also have that as well to support individuals through an ongoing basis. If those supports don't exist, it's about continual check-ins and using her natural supports, if she has any, which I understand some of our participants, clients don't have those natural supports to lean on, and trying to create consistency within those systems. Oh, and the third-party agreement. So third-party agreement is something that is connected to government funding. So if they are on income support or AISH, a third-party agreement can be signed that the rent or utilities can go directly to the landlord or EPCOR, for example, without the participant ever even seeing that money. It's just automatically deposited in.
Our next question is from Jan. Is there any consideration of this model being used in BC? Until 5 years ago, I fostered high-risk infants for 2 decades. I am now in the public high schools, and much of this model will transfer. Is the TRC aware of this model?
So I actually am a PCAP trainer that Dr. Therese Grant trained me, and there is a program in BC. PCAP is running in BC, it is not as well known in BC as it is in Alberta. However, I have gone to BC twice to train PCAP mentors and other people working in this similar field about PCAP and its best practice model. The people who keep bringing us out, which I think is, I can't remember the funding people, but the people that keep bringing us out to train in BC are looking at developing a PCAP council-like system in BC, as well as creating more programs to be able to offer that. Right now, I think it's really just about funding in BC.
Are there any strategy methods that have been proven not to work?
Not that I'm aware of, honestly. It's about digging into what does work, and there are definitely strategies that don't work for some, but do work for others. So it's about continuously trying new strategies. If this one didn't work for this person, try this one. But if that one that didn't work for this person may very well work for the next person.
And here's our last question. What is the criteria for PCAP? Can anyone with FASD get help?
So no. PCAP is a 3-year mentorship model that works with women who are at risk of delivering a child exposed to drugs and or alcohol. The mother themselves do not actually have to have FASD to be a part of this program. However, we are seeing that mothers are coming with an FASD, but the main purpose of the program is to prevent future drug and alcohol exposed births. So it's really within the prevention pillar of this FASD strategic plan. However, there are adult mentorship programs that within Edmonton and some scattered throughout the province that support people who are impacted with an FASD. Those programs are super full. There is a huge need for those programs. It is definitely being spoke about at a higher level is how can we get more FASD frontline mentors on the job. However, that's kind of why this presentation is here, is to try and create this system of FASD informed approach within our regular services, because FASD is becoming is very well known now, and a lot of people are being diagnosed because of our access to services. And so it's really about how do we support FASD in the long run.
And one more question. Can a person refer another person without that person's consent?
No, it does have to be informed consent. They do need to know about the program. We don't like to do cold calls. We will call a person as long as they are informed, but it is a voluntary program. So we do not want anybody to not be there if they don't want to be there. That is where we see the most success in relationships, is when they want to connect and not are made to connect. So thanks again for joining us today. Stay tuned for information on our next season of FASD webcasts. To get updates and registration information about each session, please email us at fasd@gov.ab.ca and ask to be added to our mailing list. You can also find past and future webcasts at fasd.alberta.ca or sign up at csslearningseries.ca. Today's webcast was recorded and the video will be posted online, along with videos from all previous webcasts. The video link will be sent out to all registrants in the near future. We encourage you to share this video with anyone you think may be interested. If you have feedback about today's webcast, please email us at fasd@gov.ab.ca and let us know. You will also be receiving a feedback email from us. Please take the time to let us know what you think about today's webcast. We would love to hear your ideas. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope to see you next time.